The call to order comes the approval of the agenda.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second it.
Thank you. Any changes? Hearing none. All those in favor of the agenda, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Matters of public interest. I believe everybody knows. Yes, you have someone who wants to speak.
Rail, right?
Come on up.
Where are you looking? Hold on a sec. All right, went right away.
Hello.
Welcome.
Yes, thank you. Good to have the mic again. This time I don't have a prepared statement. I'm not representing anyone. I'm just coming here to invite you all to something I find interesting. As you know, I'm a water feature contractor. If I've introduced myself before as that, I'm Morgan Jacobs and I live in downtown Carver. And I've been building rainwater capture systems for the last 5 years. And I've finally done one big enough to show off. And I've made my entire front yard run off of rainwater now. So I think it would be of interest for watersheds to check it out. I'm upriver in a different watershed, obviously, but I think this watershed probably follows the same practice as the others and gives grants for projects like rainwater capture and natural plantings and all that stuff. And I got a grant and put it to use. And now I think it's time to tell everybody and get everyone to come look at it. It's also filtered naturally with a, I would say, aquaponic filtration, which means it's planted and all the water is pushed up through a gravel bed. This is a biological natural filtration that's required by the, I think, International Organization of Bathing Waters, which is the European body that overlooks bathing waters. They don't allow chlorine, so this is how I've been taught to do things without any type of chemicals. And I think it's a heck of a product. And I'm showcasing it on July 18th through Sunday the 20th. It's 3 days, and I'll also have a sauna on site with a cold plunge to really get into the spirit of water and good health. You'll be able to cool off and sit in front of waterfalls as you get out of the sauna. After, if you decide to cold plunge, I imagine most people who take advantage of the sauna will want to hop in that big tank. There'll be indoor changing. I've also designed my entire lower level with 150 plants to be sort of a model of what I think future nature living will be like. And again, it runs all off of rainwater. So I think it's really an opportunity to see what we can do for the future. I'm calling it innovative right now. You can judge for yourselves, but I am professionally trained and certified through Aquascapes, which should be the biggest company in North America for water features in this type of build, which is underground lined reservoirs that are shaped and customized to every single yard's specifications. You also see I have a small yard, so I really made a long, narrow channel, which is covered by a natural looking pond with water, or a stream with waterfalls. So it blends perfectly into the landscape. It's interactive. You can walk over it easily. And it's going to be a heck of a thing to see if you come check it out.
Well,
so anyone listening, and Larry, I really hope you come because I want you to understand that I'm really in this for the long run and I want to make a difference and help. And I think if I am to take you at your word, you care about what you're doing as well. And I think this would be a great way to bury the hatchet between you and I and maybe align on some things that we agree upon in the future. So that being said, how did I finish on time?
you did good. Thank you, Morgan.
Thanks, Lori. Do you have an exact time? No, you don't time me.
Well, you're at 3 minutes, so that was good. All right. Do we have anyone else who would like to speak to us? Yes, Mr. Beck?
Yes. Excuse me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. My name's Larry Cook, 471 Bighorn Drive in Chanhassen. First comment is I believe the workshop violates the law. Basically, there's no quorum. Managers have not been appointed to fairly represent the various hydrologic areas. Therefore, in my view, they do not have the authority to act or even to hold such a meeting. A follow-up to that regarding this meeting, similar issue is any action, I believe, taken at this meeting would be invalid and void. Again, the manager is not appointed in accordance with the law. Therefore, there is no quorum and otherwise potential violations of the open meeting law regarding documentation not provided or made available. With respect to item 5C of the staff report, just a administrative deal. I'd like to see that report distinguish the old from the new items. It's a little hard to follow, especially when we're talking about those two violation topics. It'd be nice to know, by dates, etc. I know also that I believe Chanhassen has a SWMP coming up, and I think it's important to be reviewed and to have challenge Chanhassen to do something about wake boats and the damage that they are causing, particularly on Lotus Lake. And you may all be aware the University of Minnesota should be coming out hopefully soon, rather than later, with their guidance regarding wake boats, namely 500 feet from shore, etc. I won't go into any more detail. I also wanted to note that it wasn't mentioned, but Lotus Lake has had significant algal blooms this year. I've hundreds of pounds of algae I've withdrawn from my lake. And so the other lakes, I'm sure, are equally affected on that basis. With respect to the budget, I found that the presentation lacked the detail that had been in previous years. I know Mr. Sobiak had worked, I believe, in great detail with a detailed spreadsheet showing all the various components. And I've already sent a request for all the information regarding the budget. With respect to finance, I noticed that the report isn't in compliance with generally accepted government accounting principles, nor does it have a disclaimer regarding such. I believe you're going to be having an open comment period on item 7C, the Timber Lakes, and I'll have some comments of that. And my last comment is, instead of buying some land that has no water issues on it, we should be spending the money to fix that berm. And with $5.7 million, I think you could fix that berm and have a carp capture area and meet everybody's needs and requirements. So with that, I'm finished until the public hearing regarding the Timber Lakes townhomes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Do we have anyone else who would like to speak during the public comment period? Hearing none. We will proceed to reading and approval of the minutes. I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes of the workshop and regular board meeting from June 4th.
I'll move the minutes of the workshop on June 4th for acceptance.
Second.
Thank you. Anybody have any changes to the minutes?
After the workshop, I had one in the monthly meeting.
Alrighty.
Page 7, line 208. Oh, it was really small. It just said the meeting at 8:19, so I assumed it was supposed to mean the meeting adjourned at 8:19,
Okay.
but insignificant.
Hearing no other changes to the minutes, all those in favor of approving the minutes from the June 4th workshop and regular board meeting, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, none. Next, we are on to committee and member reports. Receiving the Citizens Advisory Committee's report. Is that you, Marilyn?
Yeah, I'm trying to unmute. Oh, there we go. I think I did.
Welcome.
Thank you. So I think I wasn't planning on being here, so I do not have a prepared report, but the minutes were covered very well. We had a report from Liz on the 10-year plan community engagement draft as it existed at that time anyway. And we heard about Creek Week. And as far as the community engagement, and I think Liz mentioned that in the secretary's report, that where it seems logical, since 9 Mile Creek Watershed District is also going through their 10-year plan, and we share at least one or two cities, right, in common, that it might make sense to work together where possible. That's that is about it.
Well, Marilyn, I understand that the CAC is going to be coming to visit your garden in the month of August. Is that correct?
Yes, we changed the time to accommodate Tom and I going out of town to the 11th of August, which is a week earlier than what you had in your minutes. So it's still same Monday, August 11th, 6 o'clock. Almost everybody who could make the 18th could make the 11th, and anybody who can't is welcome to come anytime.
I think that's really super of you to volunteer your space for all of us to tour. I also saw that you'll be doing a tour for wild ones as well.
Well, lawns, I've been working as a lawns to legume coach for many years. And a year ago, they started having tours so people can be inspired by other people's native plantings. And this year might be the first year that they've allowed coaches instead of just grant recipients to be on that tour. So it's really a kind of a Blue Thumb, Metro Blooms Lawns to Legume tour that I opened up to Prairie Edge as well. I don't expect it'll be very crowded because it's a statewide tour. I don't expect many people will come out to Eden Prairie, but who knows?
So I'm thinking that we need a volunteer for that committee meeting. Is that correct, Carrie?
You do?
I will volunteer. August 11th. I hear the date. I'm there.
Excellent.
More than one of us can go though, right?
Right. I'm sure.
Yeah. So I'd like to see Marilyn's yard again.
Thank you again, Marilyn, very much.
Yeah, I'm curious to have Liz score my shore.
All righty. I believe any questions for Marilyn? None. Next is the June administrators report. Terry, any questions anybody has?
Just a comment that I appreciated that you updated everything on there, so it was a lot easier to follow. So that was much appreciated.
Thank you. No other questions? Then we're on to the June staff report. Any questions?
Yeah.
Nope.
Wait a second.
Okay.
I don't know. We got staff on?
We do have some, yes, we do have staff.
Sure we do.
Well, I was just wondering if Josh knows off the top of his head or whoever else is working with him, which macroinvertebrates they're sampling for and what they're finding.
If you would take a moment and talk about the vegetation, product veg sampling you've been doing?
Yeah, so we are treating Riley next week and likely Duck Lake for Eurasian water milfoil. And the point intercept surveys are later in July and in August. So those haven't actually happened yet. And then as far as where we're at on the online portion of it, because we are trying to get a bunch of that data online so that anyone can view it. We have gotten a long ways. Elena is pretty much wrapping that up. So that's kind of where we're at with the macrophytes.
Okay, so do you do like do you look at the macroinvertebrates like
Okay, yeah.
before you're doing?
Yeah, so we do.
And after to make sure there's not.
Yeah, so sorry, I misheard you.
No, it's all right.
The macroinvertebrate sampling we have on a rotation. So what we do is we do macroinvertebrate sampling on one creek a year. So we just kind of go through it, Riley, Bluff, Purgatory, one each year, and then we just rotate back. So it gets sampled once every 3 years. And we do have some historical data as well from BAR when they collected some of the earlier samples. Yeah, so that's kind of what
Okay.
the scope of that is. The DNR has developed an IBI. They hold that a little close to their chest right now. So we don't have complete access to that, but eventually I'd like to run that through the IBI scoring methodology and then get a really good picture of what's happening in our streams. So macroinvertebrates are really sensitive and they're there a long time. So it's a good measure of stream health.
Yeah, that's why I was wondering whether it could be an indicator of if there's any toxicity or anything when we treat. I mean, I know we only have so many staff, so it's not a,
Yeah, we're treating the lakes, so not the streams, but you know, and the herbicides do break down fairly quickly. Most of them photodegrade pretty quickly. So say if you treat on Riley, it stays in Riley and degrades by the time it would outflow, for example.
okay. So we're looking at a lot more algae on Riley. Is that?
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of our lakes, with that extremely hot weather, followed by rain events, followed by extremely hot weather, followed by more rain events, and somewhat stagnant, no wind. It hasn't really been that windy either. We've been seeing algae blooms, Riley, Susan. There was even a small one on Ann that Sharon McCotter pointed out. We've been seeing quite a few. So we have grabbed samples on Riley and the Susan event to get sampled or to look at what is present and the magnitude of it. So
I was just familiar with that through the Isaac Walton League doing Save Our Streams macroinvertebrate sampling. So thinking there was one other thing I was wondering about. So the wetland assessment, let's see. You've been meeting monthly to assess progress to date on lake management planning effort and how wetland assessment program should be considered for that effort. Is that part of the lake management or is it separate?
yeah, that is part of the lake management because we're looking at the subwatersheds within each one of those lakes, those 5 lakes that we're starting with, and seeing the wetland health of the surrounding wetlands and the connections, and if we can do any kind of treatment or are they providing, what kind of benefits are they providing for the lake system that we're looking at?
Okay. Trying to get a sense of that. Okay. Well, that ought to do it. Thanks, Josh. Appreciate it.
I don't see any other questions about the staff report. So we will proceed with the engineer's report. Any questions of Scott? Anything you'd like to add, Scott? Okay, thank you. Right, next, on to the regulatory report. Any questions about the June regulatory report? Hearing none. On to any update on legal? Mr. Smith?
Madam President, only a legal update we would have would concern 2 items. I think I've shared previously by email that the open meeting law was amended. And so now you can participate remotely without having to be from a publicly accessible notice location. But it needs to be noticed that remote participation is possible. And otherwise, during the closed session, I can update you on litigation matters.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Just to follow up on that with Mr. Smith, how should we notify you for, or right by dates? If we're, like, I know I'm going to be out of town for the August one, but in a place where I have access.
Madam President, Manager Nelson, you would let Mr. Jeffrey, no. And then the only issue for him is that on the agenda, it needs to alert the public, as you notice the meeting, that managers may participate remotely using interactive technology and identify the link. But the meeting link has already been established, so
Okay, so you don't need to know where we're going to be or,
no longer need to notice your
Okay.
location.
Thank you. Next, we are on to receiving manager reports. Does any manager have a report?
I've got two things. One, when we do the rules, and this is maybe a little ahead, but you know why. We need to make sure that the rule says any grading that results in a restricted site is not our problem, that's their problem. So no grading can be an excuse for a restricted site. And I think if you read it right in our laws or rules, it says that now, but I think it should be spelled out very clearly so that it's clear to everyone that if you do your core samples before grading and say, okay, this is where you're putting your infiltration basin, and then you grade and it doesn't infiltrate, that doesn't get around the rules. The second thing is when I was at the summer tour, somebody next to me on the bus that must be close to where we are in a watershed said, why is there not a board for the Minnesota River, right? We've got the red board for the Red River and it's flooding and they get a ton of funding for doing stuff. But the Minnesota River, well, most of us have seen it, where the Minnesota River dumps into the Mississippi River. Yeah,
The confluence, yeah.
it's the
Brown.
muck is all coming from the Minnesota River. When I was a kid and I lived in Louisiana, we called the Mississippi the Big Muddy. This is where it starts. And what are we doing about it? You know, Lower Min does dredging, but that's all they do. But there could be a group of watersheds and everybody else who's interested and a committee, a board, if you will, formed to get funding and fix it. And it's going to take a long time, right? It's like the flooding up in the Red River. You can only tackle one piece at a time, but you know, if you never start, you can't finish, right? It's not going to just go away by itself. Anyway, that was my two comments.
Louis, do you have any history on that, how that got started?
The Red River Management Board.
Yeah.
Madam President, yes, managers, we represent the Red River Watershed Management Board, and they have a history of, first of all, special legislation that authorized a levy for participating watersheds that came together, watershed districts, in a joint powers agreement. And so that the key has been that the watershed districts, there's a sufficient number of watershed districts in the Red River Basin that want to cooperate together through a joint powers agreement. And so they then got the legislature to authorize a tax levy where half of the proceeds would stay in the local watershed and the other half would go to the benefit of the whole basin. And so that's been one significant funding basis, and they've used that then as leverage to lobby for other grant funds. And it was a product also of a mediation agreement with a lot of disputes about how flood mitigation projects and the environment and natural habitat all should balance. So there have been many discussions about trying to form a similar group in the Minnesota River, and many governors that have given the same speech you just gave. And the challenge, one of the challenges is that there's a fairly small number of organized watershed organizations in the Minnesota River Basin. So it's largely counties. And in general, counties have not embraced the idea that they needed to work together to work on the Minnesota River. So part of it is cultivating a watershed constituency or mentality. But it's a very, very important issue.
It could be getting watersheds created along the river to make it possible to do it without the counties.
You just have to have some interest.
Yeah.
Thank you, David. Any other manager reports? Yes.
I'd start. I don't know if recently, like Lotus Lake had a high water level and they shut down their no wake for 3 days because of high water. And that brought up a lot of interest in lake level monitoring. And there was a lot of misinformation on the Facebook group for Lotus Lake. And so it was appreciated that they've got updated, let's see, they put in new lake level monitors for Lotus and Susan, and I don't know, there was a few Minnewaska, but those are now linked to our site. They did in collaboration with Chanhassen, so people can get direct information on what the lake levels are instead of, because you can't get on a mailing list to be notified. So it's challenging to get the information. So that was very helpful. And the Facebook post was very helpful because then I can share that on the Facebook group or with other people, because otherwise it's just me saying, hey, go here. So that was really helpful. Talked to the boat inspector down at Lotus Lake, just asking if they've seen any milfoil come through, just because we've talked about how is it the second day and second year of the fluoridine treatments. And he said he's seen small pieces come through. I haven't personally seen any on the lake in the places I paddle on the western side, but so that's good, especially with all and it's been pretty clear until this recent, like I say, algae blooms that the heat took care of. And then I also noticed we have a new accessibility format to our documents. So that was interesting. I didn't realize that people have access to have the documents read to them. They got like a half hour. I thought that was interesting through that application that you were trying. So
That law, President Pedersen, just goes into effect January of 27, I believe. This is Streamline, who is our provider for the website, our host, has put together this as their way of meeting that rule.
Yeah.
Right now it is on a trial run basis, and Liz Forbes and myself are looking at our document retention policy to see what can be archived on our website and therefore not need to meet that and what should stay there. Because right now, it would be about $1,200 a month to keep that package. But it is really
but
nice.
it was interesting. And I was just the same day talking to my aunt who has severe macular degeneration. I was thinking, and she was talking about how my cousin had to read everything aloud to her. It's like, so it was interesting that there is available, not readily necessarily, but that there are services available to read things to you.
Yeah, it's a really nice feature. I like Streamline, who does our hosting. They're always meeting with us, asking how things are going. If they like to give us the beta version and have Liz and I be the guinea pig, mostly Liz. So it's been nice.
Just wanted to acknowledge the efforts there and looking forward to seeing what happens.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other manager?
Some comments. Tom had some that wanted to go first or not. So one of the things that was really neat up at Roseau was they had, I used to put on watershed summits, 2009 through 2020. But I used to feature policy that came out. So when RAPS came out, when the nutrient reduction strategy came out, a bunch of those things, I always had people come and speak on those, all kinds of things. But then we would always feature a shovel-ready project. So a lot of them were from the Red River Valley because they really had stuff ready to go. But anyway, one of the things that was part of the program in Roseau was they showed this film, and it was in collaboration with DNR. It helped a lot, but a lot of the different watershed district projects had helped, and they had taken out several dams and they put in the ripples. Anyway, the Muskie now can go all the way up to where they should be and be able to spawn. So it was just kind of
Sturgeon.
neat.
Sturgeon.
Sturgeon, I'm sorry. Sturgeon's what I meant.
They're very big,
Yeah.
sturgeon.
So it was really neat to see a success story from all of this stuff that people have been doing in bits and pieces and how it all has come together with all these collaborations. The other thing I went to was the June 17th Resilient Shoreline workshop that we had with 9 Mile, and that was really well done. I was just really impressed with the presenters. They were from Metro Blooms, did an excellent job. A lot of things that we've been pushing for anyway, but for resilient lands or lake shores, but it was really well done. So that was, and then I went to Three Rivers Park, and I can't remember if I mentioned this last time or not, but I met the maintenance guy for the one in the Bush Lake area there. So I'm not sure how much of that's in our watershed or not. It was the West Park part, but I talked to the guy that's doing maintenance and just kind of asked him if they were doing more natives, and he said that was something he could definitely look into. So he seemed real open, and it was a really neat event. They had, blanket with books for kids, even one on the water cycle for kids. But that might be another place where we could partner up on some stuff, or, I don't know, but they seemed real open to wanting to participate with us. So that was the other thing. Other than that, I've been really pushing into learning about the Groundwater Protection Act, because it does a nice job of laying out the evolution of water governance and who does what and how it's evolved, and some of the gaps, some of the issues, some of the problems. So, but it's really well organized. So it's a good read, something might be interested in as we look at where we're going, to see if there's anything that we could leverage out of that. So they go down ahead.
Thank you. You have something with us. I have one thing to say, and that is this will be David's last meeting with us on the board. And I've been working with him since he joined the CAC, when I was on the CAC. How long ago was that now, David?
Long time.
It's been a long time. And I just wanted to say, with a lot of gratitude, I'm so happy that you were with us and saw us through a lot of changes with the period of time that you were here. And I've found you to be very steady, very dependable, someone who could look at something and really kind of consider the pluses and minuses of things without getting too angry or too upset, or just really a very lovely, calming influence for all of us. And so I just wanted to take this time and say thank you so very much for all of your efforts and your hard work over all that time. We've really
Sure.
enjoyed having you.
And
Thank you.
thanks too for your participation with the Minnesota Watersheds. They are really going to miss him, because he's been part of the board for what, 6 years?
I don't think it's 6. I think it's more like 5.
Okay. But he's been treasurer, he's been an officer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now I'm thinking that you've come up with the next idea of forming a board to take care of the Minnesota River. We'll be looking forward to that.
It sounded like-
Thank you again. Okay, next we're on to the consent agenda. And you'll notice that there are 1, 2, 3, 4 items on here.
To vote on receiving the member reports.
I believe we are not doing that.
Okay, great.
So I believe we can just accept all of the items that are on the consent agenda, which is the public hearing about the budget and levy, which we discussed at the workshop, authorizing the administrator to solicit bids for elm treatments for Rice Marsh Lake and Round Lake, approving the permit for total line parking lot improvements, and then adopting the resolution for the community engagement plan, which we also discussed at the workshop.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as you listed it.
Thank you.
Second it.
Thank you. Any
So
questions?
are my comments from prior attached to anything here?
I'm sure they are.
So I can vote for this? I just want to make sure I was heard. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, sir.
President managers, I just want to point out that this will be the budget that is published in the newspaper with that, what is on that agenda.
All those in favor of the items on the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Now we are on to new business. No items from the consent agenda, so we are now at the May Treasurer's Report and approving the payment of the bills.
I'll move that we adopt resolution 25-039, accepting the May treasurer's report and approving payment of the bills.
I'll second.
Any questions before we vote? Hearing none. All those in favor of adopting the resolution to accept the May Treasurer's Report, approving payment of the bills, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed to none. All right, we are now on to public comments and considering the adoption of Resolution 25-040, awarding $20,270 to Timber Lakes Homeowners Association for stewardship shoreline restoration on Mitchell Lake.
Would you like some background first?
Yes, please.
President Ziegler, managers. So we actually have two representatives from the HOA here tonight, from the
Welcome.
Lakes Homeowners Association, which is, this property is along Mitchell Lake, hence the name. They have addressed a large area that was dominated by buckthorn along the lake shore. Now are going to be restoring that. They're working with Natural Shores Technology to restore a large portion of area. I'm trying to get the actual areas here, but it includes upland buffer area as well as wet meadow and emergent vegetation. So it's really looking at the entire shoreline of that area and restoring it into it. We and the review committee were rather excited by this project. When we took the cycle to Creek, where he's representing, thank you. He stopped and actually gave a little presentation on the area there. Just the removal of the buckthorn alone and other this down there made for a market improvement. So it's 14,000 square feet of upland, 1,900 square feet of wet meadow, about 1,000 square feet of emergent vegetation. They're going to be using more than 80 different species within the area, 1,700 container plants in the prairie savanna area, another 480 in the wetland, another 240 in the emergent zone. We have worked with Natural Shores, has done a number of different projects within the area. Their work has always been very acceptable to us and they've been easy to work with. It is a 50% match on the project, 75% match on maintenance. So I think we have a great partnership with the association, and I think we are fortunate to be able to take advantage of this and work with them on that. As I said, they are present tonight if you have questions for them, but
I think what we should do first is take public comments. Does anyone have a public comment? Yes, I see one hand. Mr. Cook.
My name's Larry Cook, 471 Bighorn Drive. I reviewed the materials. Basically, my comment is this. I don't think the materials presented were sufficient to demonstrate a need or that it met the criteria for these grants. There were lack pictures, depictions of what was going to be done, what was the status of the property. This struck me as more of a landscaping, for the benefit of the Townhome Association. There was no documentation as to the need, other than maybe addressing wetlands, but there was no specifics about it. There wasn't even a planting schedule. No diagram like that. And for this amount of money, I would have expected that there would have been much much more detail about doing such a project. So I would be opposed to it on the basis of the information that was provided. You know, if there was better information, you know, provided about the need, what it's going to satisfy, how it's going to be done, where it's going to be, you know, exactly what's going to be planted where, you know, I could see getting behind this, but it's just a lack of sufficient detail. And I think it's important here because of the amount of money that's being asked for in this great situation. The other thing that you know, strikes me is, you know, this is a significant expenditure. There's a 10-year period where they're supposed to maintain it. I saw nothing in there about financial assurances that this was going to be maintained properly. Nothing says that once they get past whatever it was, 3 or 4 years, that there was going to be any improvement to it or who's going to be in charge of it. There's no remedy as far as I can see in the documentation. And when talking about documentation, the declaration itself seemed to me had an inadequate legal description. From what I understand, PID numbers are not adequate legal descriptions by any way, shape, or form. They're missing attachments. I just think it needs to be reevaluated, the I's dotted, the T's crossed, but most importantly, show what is the real need for it. Because lacking that, to me, it's just somebody getting money, you know, and I don't, you know, want to offend anybody, somebody getting money basically to do landscaping. And this is the same issue that I have, you know, with the with that $5.8 million acquisition. This is upland, you know, and again, other than the wetland, I don't see any demonstrated need to do this. So I think it should be given back to the proponents, have them do a better job of having a proposal with all the necessary information, including photographs, planning charts, etc. That's the least that we should require in order to agree to spend this amount of money. So thank you very much. Those are my comments.
Thank you for your comments. Do we have anyone else from the public who would like to speak? Yes.
I think it's an amazing project, and I wanted to know how you both got involved, and I think this is what we need more of. So this is what, yeah.
I'm Dennis Ricosi. I'm the vice president of the HOA. And we got involved primarily through Jim Nels doing the Miller Park restoration where they're eliminating the buckthorn on the fishing pier there. And he kind of apprised of what you're doing here. We've been trying to maintain our buckthorn for a few years. We had a contractor, a tree service that came in and sort of harvested it. They cut it down to the ground, didn't treat it. So of course it came back in a fury. Last year, again, we took out about 4 huge trailer loads of buckthorn. And, you know, it's a never ending battle. So being apprised of the grant and the opportunity to work with you guys, we applied for it. And we're very fortunate, I think, we put it onto Natural Source Technologies. The proposal that they put forth describes the planting, the killing this fall, killing next spring, planting next summer, and ongoing maintenance. In addition, as Terry detailed, it's in prairie savanna. This is called prairie savanna grass, and the wetland, and then the emergent. So we're going to take out buckthorn, we're going to take out ditch lilies, we're going to take out reed canary grass. We're about 300 feet of shoreline, and get rid of that. Hopefully, get rid of that buckthorn for the long term. And the plan initially is to work for 3 years with Natural Shores Technology to maintain that. That's part of the contract, and then we would expect them to continue the contract with them at the end of that time to move it forward. But we're super impressed with Natural Shores.
Yeah.
And as I said, working with Jim Ellis and the Miller Park project, the things that he's doing there, we thought it's the right way to go to really improve the lake shore.
Well, I just think, I mean, we're losing species. We need our natural habitat, and I love that the emergent stuff is being involved. And
Yeah.
so, thank you very much.
I mean, he's got a list of about 2,400.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
So I do this for a living, and I was very happy to see the enormity of the different species that were going to go in that project and how it was carefully thought out. in terms of where those things should go and how it should go in order to make this project a longer lasting project. I've been doing this since the 90s, and I think their plan of eliminating everything this fall and then again in the spring, and then coming in and doing the planting, plus the sizes of what you're getting. I mean, I've looked at everything. I just think it's really a terrific project. When I think of the amount of space that's going to be covered with really what needs to be there, what probably was somewhat there before all the buckthorn came in, it's just a really big bang for the money as far as I'm concerned.
I was
So.
overwhelmed when the number came in. I was like, oh. That'd be twice that. So,
Any other questions or comments from the board managers? Yes.
Madam President, I guess one comment, it's just on the substantially complete date by July 18th of next year, and the planting starts in the summer of next year. So it's an issue of having it be substantially completed by July 18th. Is that a big enough window? And if not, is that something we should have in here, words to be able to extend it or be aware of it or whatever?
President Pedersen, Manager DeBell, there are two ways to approach that. One would be, so we will extend, all they have to do is send written notice to us that can be an email saying, we're not going to meet the date. This is the reason why we're not going to meet the date. Here's what we'd like it extended to. So that's one way. Or if they would like, we could just put a date of whatever the manager would like to have substantial completion. So either are fine options.
Some kind of a contingency of something that says whatever weather is delayed it or whatever, it's just a short window there. And I don't know if it makes sense to have something like that in there beforehand or just go on the basis that we can extend it.
Yeah, we can extend. We've had to extend before. We don't give any money until it's completed anyway. So if they see that they're up against it, just send an email to Eleanor Mayon in our office and we would extend it at that time. But
That's just been part of the process to allow for that.
Chances are likely that it will be done by July 18th just because there's such a shortage of natural or native plants, especially if you need it in a plug form. If they aren't putting it in before then, good luck on trying to get it.
Natural, just if you're not aware, natural soil does raise all the plants that they're going to.
Yeah, they
have control over that.
Yeah, they do have control over all of it. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so are we looking to have a motion to adopt resolution 25-040?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none. All those in favor of adopting resolution 25-040, awarding $20,270 to Timber Lakes Homeowners Association, please say aye.
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 None opposed? Yes. Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you for coming. Great project.
Yeah, well, we've never been here before. So. Only on the bike ride.
do a longer one next year.
We look forward to working with you.
Thank you very much.
All right, our next item for new business is adopting resolution 25-043, authorizing the administrator to solicit bids for the Upper Riley Creek Stabilization and Ecological Restoration Project.
President Pedersen, Manager. So this is the project that extends from Trunk Highway 5 along Riley Creek all the way down to Lake Susan, Outfall. There are 6 private properties that are implicated in it. We have owned by 4 different entities. 2 of the 4 entities have already agreed to enter into their agreement. The last 2 are doing their final review of it. They just sent me questions last week, general questions about the buffer and what it would look like. This resolution is requesting upon receipt of those final agreements that we are authorized then to solicit bids. The intent being we solicit the bids mid-July, process them or receive them by August, tabulate them, bring them back to the board in September for award of that contract. That is what the resolution, I don't know if Engineer Sobiak, you have anything you want to add to that as to what's in your task order?
Centers and managers. Also included in this would be a task order for bar engineering to continue providing bidding services, working with contractors, answering their questions, RFIs. And then once the project is awarded, then we would implement the construction management services as well. Basically being out there in the field, watching what they're doing, answering questions on the fly.
So I'd like to make a resolution to, or I'm sorry, a motion to adopt resolution 25-043, authorizing the administrator to solicit bids and authorize task order 036C for bar engineering, bidding support and construction administration for the Riley Creek Stabilization and Ecological Restoration Project.
Thank you.
I'll second. I just want to say this has been a long time coming.
Okay.
2020's last 5 years.
Yeah, it's been.
I think it's a great project. Okay, so, yes.
Madam President, just to clarify for the minutes, the motion is to not only adopt resolution 25043, but to also approve the task order.
Right.
Yes,
He mentioned the task order 036C.
Because the resolution doesn't mention the task order. So
It
I just
does.
want to be clear.
Oh.
Okay.
The
the one I'm
resolution
looking
doesn't?
and he said, and authorize
And-
the task.
and
order, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Madam President?
Yes.
Question. I guess it's along the same order, but there's no mention of the estimated price. Should that be something that's in the resolution or not? It's just in the supplemental.
Soliciting bids in the bid package would have the engineer's opinion of cost, but we had that at the feasibility report stage of this, so we're soliciting bids. We'll find out what they are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so all those who are in favor of adopting the resolution 25-043 and also authorizing task order 036C for bar engineering for the Upper Riley Creek Stabilization and Ecological Restoration Project, please say aye. Aye. None opposed. And on to permit for Fox Ridge Development. I'm assuming that Mr. Sobiak will be talking to us about this.
Yes, he will.
Managers, what we have here in this permit application is a resubmittal of a permit that was approved back in January of 2023. It's nearly the identical project this go around. What they did remove from the project was the shoreline stabilization portion. This is basically taking an existing wooded lot that has one house on it and squeezing in 3 single-family homes with stormwater management on the site. What they're also looking at doing is extending storm sewer from one of the BMPs, which is an underground infiltration chamber system, extending that with this black line, putting a new outfall into Lotus Lake. Also on this graphic, you can see there's the areas in green represent where they are preserving the trees. Essentially, there'll be no grading in those areas. They are also providing some backyard swales to capture runoff, keep it on the site and direct it towards the best management practices. In the orange is a wetland buffer. This is a medium value wetland on the site, and they are providing adequate buffer to meet the criteria. Overall, the site is about 2.5 acres, and post-construction, there will be about 0.4 acres of impervious surface on the site. The overall compliance summary, which we include in our permit reports, I put that up on the screen here. Generally, they will meet all the criteria, the way they're laid out. We have some of these C comments. Most of those are related to maintenance declarations for the buffer, for the stormwater best management practices, and for the outfall into Lotus Lake. Now, part of the reason why we wanted to put this permit in front of the board is because when they work through Rule G, which is water bodies and structures, one of the first criteria that they need to demonstrate that they meet is that the use of the Better Bank of a water body must be a demonstrated public benefit to projects affecting public waters. Lotus Lake is a public water, so they need to show that their project provides a benefit to the public, not just for their own project, but for the public. The information that they supplied to help make their case, I have summarized up here. And I'm asking the managers to think if this meets the threshold for meeting and providing a public benefit. They are providing a little bit more abstraction than they absolutely have to. 1.2 inches instead of 1.1. They have a net reduction in pollutant loads getting to the lake. Those up on the screen. And they are capturing a small portion, about 3,100 square feet of the right of way of Fox Hill Drive and routing that through the storm sewer through the new outfall. Currently, that area would just drain down the very steep slope along the banks of Lotus Lake.
Good question. That phosphorus model, does that take into account that there's going to be now lawn and turf that's probably fertilized and?
What they're using is the BIDS calculator to come up with these reductions, and it accounts for a land use cover. In the model
Okay.
itself, you can put in turf grass versus woods. So it does compute runoff separately, concentration separate.
What's the difference between what's there now and what's,
Between what's there now is they're looking at reducing the amount of runoff volume by roughly 0.2 acre feet of water. They're reducing the total suspended solids load by about 26 pounds per year, and the total phosphorus load by about 1/10 of a pound. Lotus Lake is impaired, not in the impaired waters list for excess nutrients, so any type of a reduction we can get in nutrients entering, it's a good thing. But it does come down to, do they meet the threshold of the districts and that this provides a public benefit?
what is the public benefit?
Those three items that they just set up there.
So if it's not a public benefit, what is the outcome?
If it's not a public benefit, then they would not meet the criteria, and they would either have to go through a variance process or go back to the drawing board and change their design. Or the permit could get denied as well.
It's the outlet to the lake.
It's the outlet to the lake that we're talking about.
Right, so if they didn't have the outlet, what would they do?
Slide, we can.
Okay. That's
So they looked at several different alternatives. So they went through an alternatives analysis. The first option they looked at was taking the storm sewer to the north and connecting into an existing storm sewer. Through their analysis, and because they're so deep, they would have to take out a lot of the trees along the lake there to get this storm sewer installed. And the city was not in favor of them connecting their storm sewer into that storm. So they dismissed that as an option. They looked at routing storm sewer from the furthest downstream unit along the back sides of the lot to discharge into a wetland. That was dismissed because it would change the wetland hydrology. They probably wouldn't be able to meet the criteria for the bounce and inundation to that wetland. That one was dismissed. And then the magenta line or purplish line up there would involve a pump station from the best management practice closest to the lake. Pump station, pump it up the hill over into a wetland that is off site over here. Because of the amount of tree removals, the pumping station required, they dismissed that as an option. The final option is the one that the board is considering, a new outfall into Lotus Lake.
So we just want to dump it into the lake.
They want to dump treated stormwater into the lake.
So that same stormwater comes off the wooded area and the one lot now and goes into the lake?
Correct.
So it's not making it new water going into the lake, it's just treating it and having some runoff from lawns and roofs that is added to it, but it's still reducing the phosphorus.
As the Peterson manager is equal, yes, they are reducing the phosphorus and they would reduce the total volume of water getting to the lake. they're also meeting rate control for discharge rates going into the lake. Manager Ziegler, you are correct. That runoff right now does make its way to the lake.
It seems like a benefit. The question is it enough of a benefit?
I think the question is it a benefit for the public or is it a benefit for the developer?
Right.
Well, it's a public water body. So it benefits the water body.
Not necessarily.
Is it significant? I think is the question, is that a significant? So they are going to be doing kind of clearing of trees all the way down. They'll be putting 18 inches of riprap all along what is now a natural shore. They'll probably cut that down. They've already cut down a lot of trees. They've destabilized the bank as it is. It's a 19% slope.
So just as an example, how does phosphorus and water reduction compare to the project we're doing on the north side of Lotus Lake?
The values that we have here are significantly lower than the North Lotus Lake project.
Sure, but it's also a smaller area.
Correct.
So per acre, is it similar?
Manager Ziegler, I have not considered that.
Okay. Because I mean, you can't do a huge project with a 1 acre lot.
Right.
You have a question or a comment, Tom?
Madam President. So you mentioned two things, the public benefit and what was the second component criteria mentioned here? Was it a measurement or?
It primarily is hinging on a public benefit to the public water.
Okay.
According to these criteria.
The information I have up here is the best that they could come up with and that I can help them make the case that it's a public benefit.
So is this,
Part of the reason why we wanted to bring it in front of the board rather than going in on consent is there a concern of setting some precedent which that any project with a watershed that demonstrates something like this is a public benefit?
I know of several lots where this could continue to happen on Lotus Lake.
So with regard to what Bonnie was talking about, is the riprap instead of woods, it certainly wouldn't score as well on our score your shore, right?
No.
It'll be a developed lake shore when it's done instead of a natural lake shore, but they will probably do that no matter what.
Well, why wouldn't you want to have a built-in buffer? You know, like a lot of developments, they go in, they don't cut down all the trees along the lake shore. They leave them there.
They've got to put that outlet through that. They have to make a corridor to install that outlet structure.
But that's only, what, 20 feet wide, the corridor versus the,
I would say it's probably about 25% of the shoreline.
25%.
Okay, so I do have another question, and that is, I am seeing that there are 3 lots being put on a lot that had 1 home. Has any discussion been that you've talked about with them, say, to decrease the number of homes that are going on this lot and make them only 2 rather than 3, and use that additional space to perhaps take care of the stormwater before it has to be dumped into the lake?
President Edison managers, I have not had that discussion about land use
Mm-hmm.
with the developer. That's something that the city is responsible for.
that's my concern too, is that we're setting a precedent to keep doing this, but I mean, it's all focused on volume and rate and not on actual doing something about all that extra runoff.
And there is a downside to the shoreline that they're gonna end up with,
Mm-hmm.
riprap shoreline.
Right, so that's,
Yeah,
A negative.
18-inch riprap because of probably the outlet structure. That's very large
Large
riprap.
stone.
That's so the vegetative, so maintaining a structure like this, is this something they have the ability to maintain and take care of? I mean, who is doing that as a private entity?
So it would get recorded on their property, that's part of the declaration.
Mhm.
And whoever buys that property would be required to take care of it.
Well, I'm looking at another neighbor. I have like 60 neighbors that I know, so I have a lot of neighbor examples because of the homeowners association. But they spent a lot of money last year putting in stormwater, putting in this sort of a structure, and it is now filled with silt. And they're like, we don't know how to do it. We can't. So they're doing nothing. I mean, that's just, and it's less steep than this lot. And it just washed out in the heavy rain and it filled them all up, and they don't have the equipment or knowledge or interest in spending the amount of money to do what?
And no one is coming back in 5 years period of time to see if they're actually doing this. We're counting on the homeowner to actually do this without anybody actually making sure it's being done.
That was a question. Is there a
Yes.
inspection enforcement component to this?
The district does have the ability to go out and check things that are installed for continued compliance. I have a feeling that would require additional staff in order to start doing that. There are some districts that do inspections past BMPs.
We will do occasional inspections, but again, capacity just doesn't allow us to go back and inspect all sites. The districts that do it, Minnehaha Creek, Rice Creek Watershed District, they have regulatory staff of 4 to 6 people. That's their staff.
But if it's already built and put in, what are you gonna do about it? But it sounds like from what you're describing, you're gonna see more total suspended solids because you're gonna see the silt and the future is not factored in.
Well, the future's factored in to the point that there would be turf grass over everything. There is that period of time to get vegetation reestablished, that there could be erosion that finds its way in.
And there'll be probably less vegetation on the steep slopes.
But
Yes.
if you pour water on top of turf grass, you know what happens.
I do.
It runs off. It doesn't go anywhere else. So it's still doing, you still got
just-
volume.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
So if this had say a 20-foot wide buffer on the lakeside, would that make one house go away, or is that doable? I mean, the house has to be set back from the lake anyway,
Yeah,
right?
the house is 75 feet away from the lake at least.
So you could make a
But it's a
50-foot
20% slope
buffer,
up to that
You put it
point.
back in. I mean,
It's
why does
steep.
it have to be riprap?
The riprap is where the outfall is located. So think of any end of a pipe that you see, there's rock at the end of it.
You
Sure.
gotta
That's
do
the
that.
only location where they're proposing. riprap.
Sure, and you said that was what percentage of the total?
About 25% of the lake shore.
So the other,
We'll probably get riprap
75%.
ultimately.
well, but if we made a requirement that it be a buffer even wider to compensate for the riprap in the
Well,
one part, it would seem like that would be a better benefit. You
Can we do
have the
that?
benefit and less of a non-benefit. I don't know.
I think we need to ask Mr. Smith his opinion about whether or not what we're discussing really meets the criteria of public benefit.
And President Managers, I think this is exactly the discussion, and there's not a lot of guidance
Mm-mm.
in defining public benefit for you here. That's why the engineer is identifying water quality benefits that come from the treatment coming to the lake. But what makes it a unique issue is we are not typically seeing permits for developments that create new outlets into a public water body.
Mhm.
So that's where our rules say if you're going to do that, you have to demonstrate there's a public benefit to that. The one other comment maybe I'd offer is that there's one other body that may or may not have an interest in this, and that's the DNR. Because typically when you're creating new outlets to public water bodies, they have an interest. So I know there's been some dialogue about, first of all, whether the DNR's general permit even covers this or would kind of waive permission, or if it should be simply also sent to the DNR for them to decide what to do with it. But either the engineer, Mr. Jeffrey, can probably speak to that, because that seems to me one other relevant consideration for you.
Thank you.
President Pedersen, managers, a couple things here. Thanks for opening this can of worms. Appreciate that. Okay, so let's start with the general permit. So under DNR rules, if an outlet discharges above the OHW, they don't regulate it. If it at the OHW or normal water level, then it's regulated. The general permit, under my last communications with John Gleason, would cover that outfall. So our general permit that we have with the DNR, it would fall under that. However, our general permit expired in May of this year. They extended it to July 1st of this year. I corresponded with them on June 30th or 29th of this year saying, where are we at with this? Because we have a permit that's coming up tonight that would rely on it. So you're welcome for muddying this even further than where we're at.
So because we don't currently have a valid permit,
We could kick it,
we should kick it to the DNR.
kick it to the DNR.
I think so.
All right, what is
At
everybody
least
saying?
for the possibilities of the outlet, then it's still our decision of whether it's a public benefit, even if the DNR said, or do they make the public benefit decision then?
President Henderson, Manager Nelson, if the DNR takes over permitting for work in public water, then they would not need to need something from the district under this, because they would have a permit from the DNR. So the DNR, yes, would make the determination if this is a public benefit or not.
On that part of it, but we would still have a permit for everything else.
Right.
But they're
Alright.
So
held responsible to
So,
some extent for public water, right?
a couple more comments.
So it seems that they ought to be weighing in on this. That's what I think.
Go ahead, Tom.
It seems like we're splitting hairs. We're on the plus side of variances. Right? So we're splitting hairs over what appears to be a project that kind of maybe squeaks through versus one that's on the opposite side seeking a variance.
Mhm.
So it feels like this is just another one of those projects where we're kind of dancing on the knife edge. And it seems like we've identified a couple more areas that need to be explored and kick this one down the road to see what answers we come up with. And I don't know the details of this like the rest of you do, but that's the way it feels like, this comes up on on a lot of permits, and usually we're on the bottom side of it looking at variances rather than on the top side. And the numbers appear to show this being a benefit to actually improve it, even though it might be small. Which, anyway.
President Pedersen, managers, and Mr. Smith, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this. Because public benefit is not well articulated, it is to you to decide whether or not this is a public benefit. Engineer Sobiek has provided a possible way to view it that it provides a public benefit. Engineer Sobiek, myself, and Council Welch had a robust discussion on whether or not this is a public benefit. This is why you all make the big bucks.
Okay.
This is for your,
Big bucks, we're laughing.
So- So I want to ask again, so do you think this is something reasonably, so the three of these houses would have to come into some sort of a equivalent of a joint powers agreement, right? To manage the stormwater system? Or how would this even work to maintain it, and who's responsible if you have three separate homeowners?
If it's a public water, and
It's all,
public water and the DNR, do they have
Looking at
a
each
piece of
other.
it? What she's talking?
in a normal subdivision of scale,
Mm-hmm.
It would be a homeowners association and outlots and a ongoing recorded responsibility for the association to
Mm-hmm.
do the maintenance work. Even in those examples, maintenance isn't always done.
Correct. Yeah.
Here, I'm not aware that there is a proposed homeowners association among the 3 lot owners. It would appear more likely that it's just an obligation that all 3 owners would have and not really a ripe situation for clear
But
responsibility.
in one person's front yard.
Right. So the maintenance is a good question to ask in terms of, will we really get the long-term benefit that's quantified here?
Is it possible to record something on the deeds of the individual properties like a?
It would be, it would be a maintenance declaration.
But that doesn't mean people are going to do it.
President Pedersen, managers, and I apologize if you discussed this earlier. I was responding to an email. These swales that nobody in the audience can see, you discussed that they are part of the pre-treatment and that they would have to be maintained as well. So it
Oh,
isn't
dear.
just the underground structure. But I think maybe not the bigger question, but the more pressing question is, does this overall provide a public benefit?
Given that it's a public waters, I think we got grounds to send it back to the DNR.
I think if we allow this to go and we've identified this as a public benefit, we're going to be willing to do this for how many other lots coming after this? And I'm not willing to do that. I don't see that there's that, what, point one? I'm sorry, I just don't think that is a huge public benefit. And then you've got to maintain the swale. I can tell you on the opposite side of where I live on Christmas Lake, the slopes there are 20 to 30%. And although they've been told they have to do things, when we get 5 inches of rain over a weekend, I'm sorry, but everything is just washing right down into Christmas Lake. That is what's happening. And to even get equipment down there to maintain those swales is impossible. I'm a no on this. I just can't see how this is a public I think this benefits the builder.
So if we deny it, do we have the DNR's permission to deny it? You know, if we don't have it seems like we can't approve it because we can't,
Don't want to set
Have
the
the permit
precedent.
anyhow.
well, we can't approve the permit because of the outlet and we don't have the authority to do that until we get our DNR permit back in operation. So the only thing we can do is cross it to the DNR.
But if
or-
they approve it, then
Right.
it overrides what we're trying
Yes.
to do and say.
Right. So
And
we
then
can
we'll
deny it.
have more of these come
Yeah.
to us because
I'm not saying we can't deny it. I think we
Yeah.
can deny it
Yep,
or we can send it to the DNR.
right. And I'm saying we deny it.
And
That
is
we
that a
don't
motion?
decide that it's a public benefit at this point.
Right. I would so move.
I'll
We-
second.
We deny permit 2024-096 on the basis of it is not a public benefit to have an outlet into the lake. There's not enough.
Can we have a second?
Before you read the
Seconded
list.
before you even finish. So do we need more discussion?
I don't know. Do we need more discussion?
Madam President,
Yes.
I'd like to make sure we all, as a board, that you're clear on the reasons why you don't think there's a demonstrated public benefit. And the discussion we've had so far have been, first of all, that this is an outlet into the lake.
Correct. Yes.
The water quality or pollutant loading reductions, while measurable, don't seem terribly significant.
they're inadequate or not adequate enough.
They don't seem significant. That's
Right. That's a good
word.
way. That's a good
That's a
way.
word.
Thirdly, there's a concern about a lack of clarity and commitment to ongoing maintenance of the stormwater facilities, which creates some question about the assurance that there will be ongoing pollutant reduction.
Especially with multiple homes.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Okay.
Yeah, for clear.
That's
That
excellent.
includes what Terry just brought up about the,
And the
that other
soil.
part. Yeah.
So I think we want to make sure our minutes and our action capture these.
The reason.
Right.
Yes. Are we ready to vote? All those in favor of denying permit 2024-096 for all the reasons that we've just stated, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. There it is. Capen.
So is Michael going to be happy?
The next item is Minnesota Watersheds Resolutions and Petitions.
President Pedersen, managers, we will have one more meeting prior to the business meeting for Minnesota Watersheds. I have not had a chance myself to study them with any great detail. I know Manager Crafton was at the more recent meeting, so has been party to the discussion around these. Mr. Smith, I would likely guess, has some thoughts on it as well. So really at this point, it's to discuss and
Trying to remember what they all were. One of them was supporting Bassett Creek to be at the table. Because they're a WMO, they got a C in there for commission or something. But they're not a watershed district as described. But it seemed there's no reason why they shouldn't be at the table for discussions. I couldn't, so I was very much in support of that. I'm trying to remember what the other one was.
I could speak to
Go
what the
ahead,
three
yeah.
are.
Okay, good.
That'd be helpful.
Thank you.
As to the one that Manager Crafton's referring to, there's a special Hennepin County Community Work statute that envisions collaboration among different entities, municipalities, the Hennepin County, and watershed districts. It's a rarely used statute, but Bassett Creek Water Management Organization, not being a watershed district, would like to have the statute amended so that it would be included. And I don't think there's tremendous controversy about that, other than you could take the view that the solution really is for them just to become a watershed district. And there are many advocates for that point of view. So that's one you could decide whether you want to weigh in or not. Another of the three resolutions concerns the 25-year exemption for drainage system maintenance. And that has been, I would say, a bit more controversial. I think Mr. Jeffrey has a point of view, and probably Mr. Sylvia could speak to it as well. Rice Creek Watershed District, that's involved in a lot of drainage in a highly wetland rich environment, has found that it's been frustrated with the obligation to quantify impacts under that rule. I think many of the Metro Watershed, other organizations that I'm familiar with that aren't typically involved in drainage and dealing with that issue find themselves wanting to be more protective of the wetland resource. So you may take time to read that and study it for our next meeting and think about your point of view on that one. And then the third resolution is kind of a combination of the resolutions that we have considered at Minnesota Watersheds in the past 2 years about agency permitting, the DNR state agency permitting of watershed projects. And we had a discussion of this, I think, 2 meetings ago, just presenting the issue generally. What this newest version does is collect maybe 6, 8 different ideas for how to advance the process for the DNR to be more clear in what its permitting criteria are and how they'll process permits. Because the general complaint among some watershed districts is that their water resource improvement projects or drainage projects are held up with DNR permitting and they never get resolved because there's a lack of clear criteria. So that is one that, again, doesn't touch the work of this watershed district as directly, although you do need DNR permits for some of your projects. Historically, it's been in a different posture. So that's a summary of them. And I don't, Manager Siegel, you've also been involved in the committee review.
I think it was a good summary, and I think when I asked to have this added, I thought there was a shorter deadline. But if Terry says we still have another meeting to go, it's not my problem anymore.
I don't know how I follow that one up.
Well,
Go ahead. Mr. Smith. Shoot, now I sort of lost my train of thought. Go ahead and I'll recapture it.
So part of my frustration as a person sitting on the Bubser board and the water management plans come across and the state agencies are supposed to be part of the process at the beginning. They're supposed to look at stuff. They're supposed to comment. And I can never remember whether it's a 60-day or a 90-day. But then there's another time after that, they comment. They're supposed to give guidance and the RAPS is there and all that good stuff. But then there's another comment period for, I don't know, 90 days or 60 days. And what's frustrating to me is that they don't, all these things are laid out in the plan. I mean, you've got budgets, you've got timelines, you've got all this stuff. Shouldn't the DNR be looking at this with an eye to permits that are coming forward? Or might, based on what they're going to do, have some clue as to whether there's a fen there or something so that they can clarify things when they go ahead and approve the plan and say it's good to go. And then you come back when somebody's trying to do an actual piece of it and they say, oh no, we're going to delay this. So that's the frustration I see. Should they be more involved? And that's why I don't know if this, what this is trying to get at in this resolution, but it just, and I brought that up when we had our legislative days. The DN commissioner was there, Sarah Stroman was there, and somebody from PCA. And Jasky said, well, maybe we need to take a look at the process. But
And shouldn't they have deadlines and consequences if we don't meet those deadlines? Just like the watersheds do. You know, if we get a permit and we don't review it and just let it sit there, it's automatically approved, right? So apparently that's not their problem. They don't have that issue.
We can look at, I'd like to see the revisions to it. My recollection of it was to hold them accountable to 60 days, no matter if they get a complete permit application or not, no matter if they have all the information they need. Having been a regulator in the past, it's very much a collaborative process because nobody wants to invest the money in the detailed plans and specs until you kind of get the permit or so there's this chicken and egg process that goes along. So they don't have, if you had 100% of the information early on, they could probably make a decision.
And I think Scott,
And that's
that same point
Yeah.
is, you know, what,
And that's the push pull all the time with this.
90%.
Yeah.
And you end up with the unintended consequence. They did this, the program I worked in, because it impacted a lot of industrial air quality emitters, which is, they have a lot of power in the state, money. And what happened is we just returned everything because we did not have the information and we got rid of the collaborative process of back and forth to move it forward. We were given a drop dead deadline, so we don't have everything. And now the quality of the consultant works went up after that.
Yeah.
They didn't like that. That was probably, so there's a lot of unintended consequences to setting, if you can, a hard deadline to a state agency that has a
But I
statutory
think it-
responsibility.
We have
For
the hard
years.
deadline, but we can return it and say it's incomplete, right? And people get better at making it complete because it's wasting their time submitting it when it's not
Right,
complete.
I'm not saying there's not a problem. I'm just not sure the solution that's being put forward is the best way to get at it. I don't know enough, and I'd.
The
maybe
latest
some-
resolution offers a variety of solution alternative
Good.
ideas. But maybe you all can have more of an opportunity to read it, and then we can
Talk about it next
talk
month.
about it at the next meeting.
I think that's what we need to do.
So it needed work from where it was.
All right, we're then on next month. then, right?
President Pedersen matters, just before we move on, I just want to verify, so Jan has been sending them out. Have all of the managers been receiving?
Yes, I
Jan?
have.
Okay.
I have.
If you have not, please let me know and I will make sure that you get on their list, but
Okay, we're on to the next section, which is the update on the Larry Cook versus Riley Perk. Do we need to go into closed session?
Yes.
What's happening here?
Madam President, I would recommend that the board go into closed session for the purpose of receiving confidential legal advice about litigation strategy in 2 lawsuits. One, Larry Cook versus the district and Terrence Jeffrey, that concerns the Spring Road Conservation Project. And the second, Larry Cook against Hennepin County, Carver County, the district, and other parties, that concerning the manager appointment process. So I'd like to go into closed session to discuss litigation strategy as to both of them.
So we need to vote on going into closed session,
Yes.
yes?
I'll move that we go into closed session. for
You?
those.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor of going into closed session, please say aye.
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 None. And would you like us to go into the, yes,
I think it'd probably be easiest, please mute your mic.
me? We're now back in open session. And we have everyone. So you can see what the upcoming board topics are for next month and yes, for next month. And also what the upcoming events are. Don't forget the one in the October watershed is either the 2nd or the 4th week of the month, correct? And we already have the resources conference and the annual conference there. So I believe at this point, I would entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Just, wait a second. I'm trying to remember where the Bowser meeting is. So if I'm at the Bowser summer tour, we might need a delegate. Oh, we got an alternate, right? For the resolutions meeting.
On August
Oh,
25th.
yeah, you have an alternate. Tom is the alternate.
Tom's the alternate.
You have an alternate. Tom is the alternate.
Okay. I'm still entertaining a motion to adjourn.
We'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank
I'll second. Tom Haslett.
all those in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. We are adjourned.